What advice would you give to business architects to really be as successful as they possibly can, and how might maybe they follow in footsteps like yours?
Well, I think that it depends on what you really want to achieve with your career, okay? And whether it's about the title or whether it's about the responsibility and what it is that you want to do. I think that as I've said, you can practice elements of business architecture in almost every role wherever you work. And depending on the organization, they may call their head of sales a business architect, okay? They may call their CEO a business architect. I think Elon Musk thinks he's a business architect. All right. It could be any role anywhere. And it's really about, what do you want to do? Are you actually practicing all, which aspect of business architecture fits in with what it is that you enjoy doing and that you like doing from a career perspective? And then you go away and you work out where that is, where you're best placed to add value, and then you just go and do that role,
Mhm.
whatever it might be called. And know that if you are going to be successful in that role, then there are elements of business architecture that you can practice within that role. If, for example, you are happy with having a central role, or that's the role that you want to try, or that's the role that you have right now, then hopefully, in discussing it between us, we've been able to give everybody a clear picture of, currently, that's one specific description of the roles and responsibilities and the accountability of a business architect, or somebody with a central business architect or business architecture practitioner role, and all the different sorts of things that they need to be involved in, and where they can add the most value.
Yeah. Do you think, I'm thinking about some of all of your background and your focus, for example, today on digital operating models and your deep data focus. Do you think business architects need data and technology background to be successful?
Personally,
Mhm.
that's a hard question for me, because I do have that background.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of the people who don't have that background, and what would it take for them to bridge the gap, for example. And it's really interesting. So I started the strategy journey sort of around about 2016, when I decided to call it the strategy journey. And when I came up in 2017 with the concept of the book, I went away and did my Kickstarter campaign to get it funded. And then it took a while to write it, to really pull all of these different aspects together, because it is actually a complex subject,
Mhm.
in joining the dots between so many different things. And then I was able to add the coronavirus disruption dimension into it during the lockdown as well. So, I'm actually glad to have had that time, because, again, I think I've said this before, if I published the book in 2018 or 19, it would be a very different book to what it is today, where all of these different additional perspectives. And the thing is, if you are going to be a successful and true business architect, you need to understand where the economy and the world is actually changing. And the reason why data and technology is so important is because that is the way the world is changing right now. Okay. The direction is that we are going more digital, especially with the pandemic, making us having to interact and communicate in digital forms and buy things, and support our livelihoods and everything else in a much more digital format than we ever thought before. So if you just have a look at it and think about, what do people do? What are their needs and wants? What problems do they have in life? And what are these sorts of services, products, or whatever it is, that help them to form and create that life that they want? That's actually where the trends will always lead towards.
Mhm.
It's actually a really interesting thing. I mean, I don't want to get into like history and philosophy here, but I actually cover it slightly in the strategy journey book. I talk about Aristotle. the Greek philosopher, and what he described as the 4 pillars of a good life. And if you actually move down the service design route and innovation, you'll know that all the coolest, best services always move towards supporting one of these 4 pillars: health, wealth, knowledge, and the last one, which some people call relationships or people, I call it connectivity. Okay, so it's always in the direction of one of these 4, or a combination of these four pillars of a good life. And there can actually be an imbalance between some versus others. So if people are going after hardcore connectivity, right, that's why we have these big cities, urbanization. Then what happens is, well, we've probably put the detriment of our health at stake when it comes to urbanization and what we've done with connectivity. And if you have a look at all the good things about digital, there's also all the bad things about digital. And again, that leads to health being one of the things that are always at detriment. Again, if you have a look at the financial crisis that happened, a decade and a bit ago, that was a huge push towards the wealth side. And again, what happened when, you over focus on one of these pillars, some of the others start to, so really when you talk about balance between these 4 things, you need to be looking at them and where the trends are. And you then need to look at, well, what exists today, what exists in the economy, what exists from a technology perspective. And again, take technology back to its true form. What is technology as a pure original definition? It's anything that, it's not just about robots, it's not just about AI, it's not just about digital marketing. Back many centuries ago, a conveyor belt was new technology, okay? The discovery of medicine was a new technology, right? So again, there are all these different aspects to technology in its past, technology in its future. There's no getting away from the fact that if you take technology in its true definition, you are going to have to keep in touch with what it actually is, whether it's still digital or not. I mean, one day maybe, we move into a matrix-like holographic world where we're all just dreaming, whatever it might happen, and we can beam ourselves like in Star Trek or whatever it is, right? Who knows? And then maybe modes of transport, even autonomous vehicles cease to exist. Who knows, right? So what we have to do is just have a look at what is possible, where it's evolved, and make sure that you're in touch with what these changes are. It's about being adaptable and keeping in touch with change. And whatever industry that you've chosen to focus on, where you've built an expertise, finding a role within that and keeping in touch with all those things. That's actually the true essence of what it takes to, change, evolve, transform. That strategy itself. If you want to call that a key thing that would drive your business architecture career, then I say go for it if that's how you see it. But I actually don't think that it's specific to business architects. I think it's whatever you do, whatever career you're in. And we've just said every role has an element of practicing business architecture. So in essence, you need to understand what's happening in the world around you. What are the trends? What's happening? And that starts with looking at what technologies are out there. And one other thing is, if you are going to be looking at trends, how do you find these trends? In the data. Yeah. There's no other way, okay? Data speaks what trends actually are. So how could you not be in touch with data and technology if that is actually what's driving change, not just in its, new form, be it AI being, the latest technology, or VR, or whatever it is that happens to be the technology of right now. Again, another one, if you have a look at, the medical and pharmaceutical industry, I mean, they've been harnessing and developing the technology to look at how they would find, have vaccines ready. The coronavirus vaccine started in January, okay? They already had the technology, and they were literally testing it with infected, DNA or whatever it is to get to the point where they, had enough people to be able to whose health improve as a result of receiving the injections in whatever combination that they've chemically formed the medication to be able to say, oh, we've got a 90% efficacy rate, so it works. Okay, the technology itself already existed. They started developing, so have a look at that aspect of technology. It's not just about, AI and everything else. It's just what's there now. Who knows what's going to be in the future? You simply just need to be staying in touch with the data that's telling you what's coming, what are the trends, how are things changing, and how are people behaving, and what are they thinking and doing now, and then what technology could help to support that, accelerate that, change that, impact it, influence it in any specific way. And if with those two things in mind, that's what you have to bring to any career, anything that you do. If you are in the business of working, providing value and earning a living and delivering value and existing in this society. I know it sounds very, very philosophical. I've talked about Aristotle and all those things, but I just wanted to make it very clear that you have to have that open mind as to what is possible if you are going to be able to practice elements of business architecture in whatever it is that you do, or elements of the strategy journey in whatever you do. And, I've made it very clear, I chose not to call the book a book about business architecture because at the time that I was writing it, there may have been people who didn't understand what business architecture was. It sounded rather technical. And there may be people who didn't like the term or who didn't have the role of the title. And it's also got all of these political connotations with it. Whereas actually something like the strategy journey is so open and generic that it could be used to describe just about anything or any problem that you might have. And that's the reason why it was called that. So hopefully that sort of gives everybody a perspective of the fact that it's really more or less, depending on whatever perspective you choose to take. And that is actually what it is. That's actually, whether you want to call it strategic thinking, design thinking, architecture thinking, definitely not systems thinking, because I think that's too specific. But, I think that it's important that you see that there are problems, that there are challenges, and that we have to be involved in solving them. And you can have any title or role that you want, where you can practice an element of this strategic and architecture thinking that exists. And hopefully, if you're interested in it and you're passionate about it, then there is an important role in the form of what we have called the business architect. And somebody takes up that mantle of doing that very, very challenging, difficult role in the middle of being the glue and the source of truth and the gap bridger and everything else. It's not an easy job to be doing. It's very interesting, but you have to have the heart and the mindset and the motivation to be able to want to take on that role, to literally be that center that people are hitting all the time. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that gives everybody a good picture of what I think it actually is.